But back to our international stories, where the U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken is expected to travel to Israel on Friday. It will be his third trip since the start of the conflict on October the 7th. The State Department said Mr. Blinken will also make other stops in the region.
For more on this, let's cross live to the Israeli city of Tel Aviv and speak with Arise special correspondent Carl Bostic. Carl, great to have you here on Newsday. Thank you for being here. Please update us on what more we know about today's activity at Rafah and anything more about the refugee camp in Gaza that was hit yesterday by an airstrike.
Yes, good afternoon. Well, you've already covered a lot of ground right there, but understandably so, because it's a lot is happening very quickly in different directions as we speak. So, for example, we speak about, firstly, the Rafah crossing, where we're seeing injured finally being allowed to leave Rafah into Egypt. So far, what's happened is a field hospital has been set up near Rafah in the Sinai to receive those 81 seriously injured patients. This is the first time that the Rafah crossing has been opened since the start of the war. That's October the 7th. And we're also seeing for the first time an exodus of foreign passport holders or Palestinians who are dual passport holders. Today, it's about maybe 500 people who are being allowed to leave from countries such as Austria, Australia, Jordan, Finland, also members of international aid agencies like Doctors Without Borders, International Red Cross, and of course, the UN agency UNRWA. They're being allowed to leave today. This is all the resultant product of a very intense negotiations carried out in Qatar as they mediated between Israel, Hamas, and Egypt for this to happen. This is also in close coordination with the U.S. Tomorrow, it's expected to be ramped up to about 1,000 such people with foreign passports or dual passport holders, 1,000 people who will be allowed to leave Gaza into Egypt. As far as a timeline of how long this will last, they won't say, though some of U.S. and Israeli officials are saying as long as it takes, keeping in mind that you've got thousands of foreign passport holders in Gaza. For the U.S. alone, you have about 500. So we'll see a lot of movement on that front. But then again, putting it in perspective, only 81 people were evacuated for medical reasons when you have thousands more badly injured. As far as Jabalia is concerned, last night Israel did confirm responsibility for the attack that you did refer to. The target was a senior commander of Hamas. But to get into more detail, this commander was believed to be the one responsible, his unit responsible for one of the attacks on the kibbutzes across the border on October the 7th. And what the Israeli forces had done, they had identified the entrance to a tunnel where he was staying, and also that was the training center for that unit that went into Gaza. So as far as what's happened today, again, a second time in Jabalia, that's a refugee camp of about 116,000 people. We haven't heard any word yet from the Israeli government or military, but what they're suggesting is that this is a case of, they're trying to basically identify those tunnel entrances where the threats of attacks to Israel are. And unfortunately, these tunnel entrances are in very heavy residential neighborhoods, which is what Jabalia represents. That's also why Israel had been warning Gazans to leave northern Gaza because they want to isolate northern Gaza. They want to cordon it off. They want to section it because you're going to see some very ugly urban warfare. Neighborhood to neighborhood, street to street, house to house fighting that would take place, already intense clashes. So what you saw today, unfortunately, is a prelude to it. And quite honestly, that's one reason why Secretary of State Blinken is coming to Israel on Friday. Actually, it's his second visit since the war started. And he'll be talking about, expanding the humanitarian aid and relief for Gaza citizens. He'll be also weighing in on how the U.S. feels about how Israel is waging its offensive because they really want to minimize civilian casualties. And then also keeping in mind that really what happened today is this is a complex situation. It's not even connected to the humanitarian issues or the military objectives that's being navigated right now. And the U.S. is basically a partner in all of those decision makings. That's why Blinken's here. One more final example of just how detailed and specific the U.S. role is. A team of U.S. Special Force operators are actually in Israel now, and they are advising and giving Israel guidance on how to find out where those hostages are being held underground. In other words, how to identify those tunnel entrances and how best to get inside those tunnels without compromising their safety.
Right. Now, of course, we are seeing that impact of this Israeli offensive. But what does the strategy mean for the more than 200 hostages that are being held in Gaza?
You know, what's interesting is this. Hamas last night, they came out with a directive saying that obviously Israel doesn't care about the fate of its hostages. We've shown our readiness to release them, but what they didn't mention are the conditions that are probably behind that kind of readiness. They want maybe an all-for-all swap. There are like more than 6,000 Palestinian prisoners in Israeli jails that they want to exchange them for. And also they want a ceasefire, perhaps of undeterminate length, that would allow them time to regroup. That so far Israel has refused to do. And keep in mind, they rescued an Israeli soldier, a female soldier, on Sunday. That could not have happened if there had been a ceasefire in place. So that's why they're sticking to their guns. But final point I want to make is that, when you talk about these thousands of targets being hit, yet the rocket attacks still happen. And that's because for Israel, a target is anywhere from which rockets can be launched, or anti-tank missiles. And the thing is, they're so mobile, they can happen from doorways, they can happen from windows, they can even happen from pickup trucks. So because of the mobility of these types of rockets and missiles, that's why you have so many, because here in Tel Aviv, 47 miles from the border of Gaza, we're hearing explosions and sirens every day. In the afternoon, in the evening, we have to go to the shelter because of rockets still being fired this deep into Israel.
Well, thank you, Carl, for that update. Of course, I think it's definitely worth mentioning that this is a war that could widen onto another front against Hezbollah in Lebanon. How likely is an escalation on that front?
Well, very simply put, a lot of people will be paying attention to the leader of Hezbollah, who's remained silent this entire 3.5 weeks or so. I'm talking about Hassan Nasrallah. Hassan Nasrallah is the leader of Hezbollah. He's not spoken at all publicly. He'll address Hezbollah and make a live video statement tomorrow on Friday, 3 p.m. local time. That'll give an indication of what Hezbollah feels. But quite honestly, Hezbollah, which is a prime political power inside Lebanon and the dominant military force, they don't want this war. However, there's a red line. That red line is if Hamas is under threat from being eliminated, they will get engaged, get involved. But that's their dilemma, because this is not a war that neither Hezbollah or even the Lebanese government wants, because it will come at great cost. The Lebanese economy is now almost in ruins right now, and a war would just be devastating. That compounded by the fact that the U.S. has moved 2 U.S. carrier groups off the coast of Lebanon, off the coast of Israel, that is, and they're prepared to, support Israel if there is any escalation in fighting between Lebanon and Israel. And the thing is, the Hezbollah is much, much more deadlier than Hamas. 10 times the capability in terms of missiles, precision. They can hit things precisely as far as away as Tel Aviv, which is 140 miles from Lebanon. They can hit specific targets here. So it's a much deadlier thing, but it's not a war that they want, because it would come at a heavy price, not just for Hezbollah, but for the country of Lebanon itself.
Right. Well, thank you so much for that insightful update on all that's going on. That's Arise special correspondent Carl Bostic. Thank you again.